hear me okay? Yeah! So first off, thank you so much, Faye Faire, for inviting me here today to share my work with you. I will be reading some spoken word poems. I'll be reading 3 poems for you guys. The first poem I have is called Yellow, and it was written about someone I used to know. I saw this TikTok trend a while ago that asked, "Who is your yellow?" Which goes to say, who is your walking sunshine? Who's your twin flame? When I met Yellow, it was freshman orientation, and I was busy trying to camouflage into the deep blue seats. Yellow had a pixie cut, braces, and a streak of golden hair. I had this obsession with guessing birthdays, but before I could guess hers, out of her mouth came my birthday. The year, the month, the day. On the same day in 1997, we surfaced crying and took our first breath, separated only by state lines. From her wrist and the tremble in her fingertips, I knew we were at the same masquerade. We were not whole. We trudged the world with half our soul, holding facades infinite times as colorful, infinite times as beautiful. Our angels and devils shook hands and traded places. We used to joke that together we made one fully functioning young adult. We borrowed each other's strengths to do the hard things like raise a hand in class or ride the bus to Tesco. Yellow swore like a sailor, but she tried to turn it off around her parents. I'd hear her mom in the other room threatening to break out a fresh bar of soap. When I heard her sing, I was a shade of hunter green. Her nightingale voice had a resonance that made the trees quiet and made the birds sing back to her. Making her happy was my full-time job and only pastime. She was not her storms, not bared teeth or clenched fists. Yellow was childlike gusto and euphoria smeared outside the lines. Yellow was too shy to talk to her desk mate, but leapt at the chance to lead a blind man through a crowd. She was nose pressed to the window of a claw machine, frozen yogurt, cat ear headbands, and a laugh that woke the neighbors. I've always thought of yellow as a fragile color. One touch of black and it loses its shimmer. Maybe that's why she was the candle flame sun we all revolved around, hands cupped around her fire. Yellow didn't think she would make it past 21. And so I stayed up most nights, waiting for smoke signals. I turned my graveyard into a garden so maybe her ghost would get a clue and get out. I was her willing hostage, her stronghold, and when I crumbled, went to keep the candle lit by someone else's bedside, she disappeared. TikTok also said that your yellow person saved you. Without her, would I have spent those years sinking to the trenches of my bed sheets? Would the walls have learned my secrets and shouted them back at me? Because the drug of being needed was so much more addictive than anything I've tried to pour inside myself. We may have been 2 halves of a whole, but I gave her my whole heart. Yellow is now 27 and married. I was not invited to her wedding, but I saw pictures of her silk white gown and glowing smile. I hope he keeps her flame lit. I hope he keeps her clouds away. Thank you. So this next poem involves a little bit of wordplay, and it's also a sort of a twisted love letter to poetry. First off, this is not a poem. It is a planet spinning backward light years in the wrong solar system. It is a gentle storm kicking up oxymorons in the deafening silence, and I am busy making mountains of metaphors, like I woke to your empty pillow, and getting out of bed today was my mountain. Or maybe the mountain stands still and stubborn, arms crossed, refusing to be personified. Or can you hear the rain and how it pitter-patters as it falls, 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 victim to repetition? This is not a poem. It is a confused chameleon that's constantly changing colors. Watch me handpick hyperboles like how it took me a heartbeat to fall in love with you and a century to unlearn your coffee order. You see, this is not a poem. It is a war-torn fort built from walls of text, a barricade I sequester myself behind, and your silence is the sledgehammer. I will pore through the dictionary, picking exemplary phrases to paint a perfect picture, praying you won't perk your ears to the alliteration. This is not a poem, it's a prayer. And what is a prayer but wish and hope joined in holy matrimony? You see, poets are something like magicians. We are the reigning monarchs of misdirection. I saw myself in half and you applaud. I pull the sunset out of a hat and call it an ending. Look at this vibrant show of valorous vocabulary, ever vying to show without telling. All this to say, you hurt me. All this to say, I still love you. Thank you. So I have one more poem for you guys. This poem, I finished it, I just wrote it recently actually, sometime last week, and I got the idea for it while boiling water in my kitchen. It's called States of Mattering. You were once so solid, the ice sculpture carved to perfection. I couldn't have imagined the way your hands felt, twice the size of mine and ice cold. My heavy head, laden with barbed wire and wet cotton, nestled in the crook of your neck, your cheek pressed to my hair. And you held steady, like the suspended loops of a speeding bus, like roller coaster handlebars. Your heart was in my hands when it began to melt. It turned from a ghastly gray to purplish red, started pulsing, shaking off the ice shards and snapping them like sugar glass. I went to sleep with it, counted the muted beats like sheep. You went from solid to molten, and I could see it in your languid smile. The planes of your face stretched into unfamiliar ease when you laid eyes on me. The crags between your brows ironed themselves into a valley. You showed me the parts that were still soft, and the parts that time took from you but eventually returned, like red velvet cake. You could never resist that vibrant color. Simple food coloring, but it was like eating an asteroid, you said, or Mars. And on those nights when we passed the Riesling bottle between us like a baton, you pulled. I could close my tiny fist around the toughest parts of you, and you'd seep through my fingers. You were bleary, shapeless, water. And the gratitude sang from my veins as I gathered you up. How privileged I was to be your confidant, to stay up like school children and whisper secrets under the blanket while the adults were asleep. That night, face flushed with wine, head pressed to the seat of your car, you wept at the volume of butterfly wings. I placed my hand on your shoulder, but it slipped off just as quickly, like trying to catch a waterfall with cupped palms. You spilled over, and I could not contain you. I walked through your mud banks with a drowned dress, still braving the whiplash. I learned to sleep on your riverbeds. The villagers came with their pitchforks and torches, but you swallowed them whole. And you promised. Under the blanket of stars and sleeping pigeons on telephone lines, you promised you'd stay. Said no one stayed with you through all the unmaking and all your states of being. Then one day, I reached out to touch you and found only empty air. Your hand no longer in arm's reach, your shoulder wispy and disappearing, and I tried to grab onto you. Like a child jumping after a runaway helium balloon, how I cried, how I screamed at the sky to return you, but you went the way of fallen rain, back into the air, like you were never even there. What do I do with these calluses? The heavy head, the ache in my stomach. Did you leave your shackles with me? I cannot hear my heartbeat. I haven't found it since you left. Nothing but a congealed mass of half-melted ice cubes sits in my chest. Is this what it means to matter to someone? Solid, liquid, gas, I am in science class again. If it is cold that will bring you back, I'll wait. Here on the curb, by every car the color of yours, with chattering teeth and freezing palms. Thank you so much, everybody.